Alright, in today's video we're hopefully going to repair this window trim and bring it back to life. If you own an old BMW, you know exactly what I'm referring to. Considering that both of my E36s need this done, I'm gonna go ahead and give painting the trim a try before I go ahead and spend the hundreds of dollars on trim sets for both of my cars. This car sat in a field for like 10 years prior to my ownership, so I'd imagine we're gonna have to do quite a bit of sanding. On my M3, it is not nearly as bad, but this trim honestly should probably be replaced. But considering this car and its purpose, I think this is a great test car for something like this. So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna prep it with tape and masking paper, sand it, make sure it's really sanded, and try and get it as smooth as possible. Then I'm gonna prime it and paint it. But yeah, it makes the whole rest of the car look like, so let's fix it, hopefully. So this trim, as you can see, is pretty rusted, but there's a little coating to it, and it's all this stuff up here. So what I did is I heated it up a little bit on the bottom. I pulled the rubber from the door seal down, so we had access to the bottom of it, and I just ran the razor along and got rid of all of what's left. There's a little bit on top, hoping that comes off with sanding. Otherwise I'll keep picking at it with the razor. But from here, I'm going to put tape on the inside of this lip, and then I'll run paper. I did not pull this window out. I'm sure it'd be easier if you didn't, but as long as you get something started, if you have that lip on the bottom, you get it started and you can just follow it. This part is pretty tight, but everything else pretty easy. Down here, it's a nightmare. So I don't know how perfect it'll be. Hopefully this will still be worth the time and I won't regret not spending the $300. So I'm knocking down as much as I can. I'm starting with 220. You could probably go with an even lower grit, like 100 or even 80, but I feel like that might be a little too coarse for something like this. If anything that didn't come off with the razor blade or the gouges that the razor blade made, trying to sand that off. So I'm gonna start with 220 and I'll probably end up at a higher grit. But I'm gonna make the first pass with 220 and we'll go from there. This is pretty time consuming though, so just remember, do you value your time or your money more? Because this will take you all Saturday.
No!
You're fucking kidding me?
What the fuck?
Why did it even do that?
I don't know.
It was covered.
I know.
I'll knock that off. Let's knock that off real quick. I'm gonna knock it off. So, just see. Wow. It's like unwrapping a gift you just wrapped. Dude, that's really not bad at all.
No.
What do you think?
No, me.
Whatever. You know, we'll knock it off. Yeah.
No, not fucking bad.
Dude, it actually turned out pretty good. Alright, so it's not perfect, but it does, I would say it looks pretty good for the amount of money spent. I am gonna do the other side because now that I see it, like just looking at this from here on camera, it looks really sweet. There's a little bit of overspray, but your paint job is your prep job, so that's completely however much you want to prep. It's very hard to get the tape all the way in those little pockets. Like I mean, I don't know. I don't do body work and I don't prep cars, so I have no idea. I mean, if you're really good at this and you take a ton of time, if this was my M3, believe me, I would have spent all Saturday on my masking job. I'm a little bit more impressed because when I was painting this, every coat I was like, oh, this is getting more f***ed every time. But pulling it off, dude, that did this car a huge favor because the rust looks so shitty, but this looks good. All right, it is the next day. I let this sit overnight and it looks super, super good. It looks a ton better than I expected. And honestly, you can make this as good as you want it to be. Just remember, your prep job is your paint job, and that very much rings true with this project. So before I start on the other side, I do want to run you guys through the materials I did end up using because this was pretty cheap and it can be done for a hell of a lot cheaper if you'd like. To get all the excess trim off, I used a razor blade. I'm sure there's so many other things that you can use that would be better for this. I used a Dremel at first to kind of start getting some of it off, but it started gouging the trim a little bit and I didn't want to deal with that, so I just manually did it with the razor blade. I sanded the entire trim piece in 220. 4 coats of this Rust-Oleum primer, and then just a very light sand of 400 in between it to try and sand out any imperfections. Now this is the golden ticket. This stuff is perfect. It leaves a perfect satin finish, which is just like OEM, and that was important to me. I did not want a super matte finish or a super gloss finish, and I think this literally matches perfectly with the rest of the trim. As far as actual prep materials, super simple, just painter's tape, and you can use newspaper or buy this stuff from the store. I used this little squeegee piece to get tape in between the grooves, various trim tools, stuff like that. There's no more overspray that you can see. I used Q-tips with isopropyl alcohol and anything that couldn't take care of. Used a little bit of brake cleaner. So all said and done, this was like under $50 and you could do it for cheaper. But with all that said, I have a ton of work to do on this side, so let's get right to it.